Hi, this is Veronica Lopez with TreetopSecret.com. In this session, we'll be talking about what every teacher ought to know about the TEKS. The session is broken up into two sections basically, the first part covering theory and the next part covering practice. At this point, since it's the start of the year, you're probably thinking about if you're going to be ready for the first day of school, how should you prepare for the changes to the math TEKS, how you're going to get your students to care about what they're learning, how you're going to get them to stay on task. And we're going to cover those essential points throughout the session. Let me tell you a little bit about myself first. I'm a certified teacher, principal, and professional development provider. I currently work as an educational consultant with Treetop Secret. I've worked with high school students, elementary students, and adult education students over with Region 1 Service Center. And I'm currently working on the dissertation for my PhD in curriculum instruction and assessment. I have presented for Discovery Education, written for Edutopia and ASCD, and if you want to know more about me, you can find more information over at www.treetopsecret.com. So you're getting ready for the year, and you're excited and maybe even a little nervous all at the same time. You're going to start the year off with a can-do attitude, and you're determined to make this a great year. You may even have some ideas bouncing around in your head. Perhaps you started gathering your materials and maybe even getting your classroom ready. As you think about those first few days, you've no doubt thought about going over rules and setting up procedures, because those are the things they've always told us are crucial during the first days, rules and procedures. And they're absolutely right, they are crucial. Along with rules and procedures, though, you might be thinking about your first few lessons. And this year you have to consider the changes to the math TEKS. While you may be thinking about them, you may not have a plan to make them a focal point, a real priority during the first days of school. And that is where I want us to really focus, because making the TEKS a priority is the one thing that could make all the difference for you and your kiddos this year. Now, I want to ask you to fast forward a little bit. Let's say we're in September and October. You know those days are going to come when you start asking yourself, telling yourself, I don't have enough time. How am I going to get it all done? Perhaps a few of your students aren't being challenged enough. You also might have situations with students who are frequently causing discipline problems. You may be wondering why they don't seem to care. Where's their motivation? Why aren't they interested in math? Why aren't they really thinking or showing their work? Why aren't they checking their work? What can you do to get them to like math, or at least stop saying that I'm no good at math? No doubt that's coming up, in a few weeks after school begins. But, let's come back now to the present, because what we do now can make all the difference. It turns out many of those issues that I was mentioning, those problems, they can be avoided if you decide to make the standards or the TEKS a priority, as much of a priority as you're planning on making rules and procedures during those first days of school. Now, more on that in a bit. For now, let's jump into a little theory. I'm a firm believer that to really know a thing, you have to begin at the beginning. And in terms of these TEKS revisions, we begin at the committees and panels of experts who were brought together by TEA, or the Texas Education Agency. Those TEKS committees looked at the curriculum focal points. So the National Council of Math developed some focal points, and they help us prepare students for college and career readiness. So they were created by the National Council of Math, and then Texas had their own response. But they all look at the critical foundations of algebra, the whole numbers, fractions, geometry and measurement, developing conceptual understanding, computational fluency, and problem-solving skills. So these are the key factors that were used when these panels were making up the TEKS revisions. Here's the link. All the documents that I'm going to show you in a few minutes, they're all found on the TEA website. The next, we have additional resources. So not only do they use those curriculum focal points, but they also looked at these resources. They've got information from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the Minnesota Department of Education, Ministry of Education in Singapore. All of these resources are just good for you to know. If you're someone who wants to know more about how these things are developed, if you want to know more about what are some of the exemplars that they've used so that you can kind of guide yourself as well, this is a good resource for you. If you want to compare a side-by-side comparison of the TEKS, what do they look like, what are the revisions, you can use this document. Just beware, they are lengthy and it's going to take you a lot of time. I highly recommend that you just work from what they are now instead of going back and doing a comparison. But if that's something that you want to do, it's certainly available to you. So one resource that's really good is it comes from Region 10. I couldn't find the links there, but I did find the links over at Grand Prairie. But again, they were developed by Region 10. So the Grand Prairie schools have the links up, and what they did was they unpacked the TEKS. They're rewritten in a little bit simpler form so that you can understand them. There's some examples provided as well. I recommend you go download them and keep them on your computer. Sometimes websites, they take things down or move them and then you can't find them again. So I recommend you go and download them so that you have them for your records. And here's an example of what they've provided. This one is for kinder, and they show what's new to the grade, what's been moved from the grade, and then instructional implications. So some of the things that have changed in kinder, they include students are now going to have to look at 2D shapes and 3D objects. They're going to have to problem solve with objects and drawings. In first grade, students are looking at multiples and counting forwards and backwards, looking at expanded form. Second grade, they've got place value up to 1200. Third grade, they've got to multiply to the level automaticity. Data analysis with dot plots and frequency tables. Fourth grade, students are working to the billions place value. They're measuring angles with a protractor. And in fifth grade, they're having to find the numerical patterns in equations. And they also have to learn the order of operations in terms of parentheses and brackets. So there are a lot of changes. Chief among those changes are that the mathematical process standards, the standards that we work on for problem solving and the tools that students have to use, they used to be at the end of all of our TEKS. Now they've been moved to the forefront, and they were moved intentionally. I'll talk a bit more about that in a little. So the other thing that was changed is the financial literacy TEKS were added, and those are at the end of all of our TEKS at each grade level. So again, you might want to go and take a look at these. It's up to you. It's going to take a lot of your time. I recommend start from what they are now. Just work from there. It'll save you a lot of time. TEKS and teaching. I bring this up, or I have this visual for you because we have to keep all of these in mind when we're teaching. But a lot of times we focus on the curriculum, the instruction, and the assessment. Curriculum being the materials that we use to be able to teach. Instruction is how we actually teach, and an assessment is, how we determine whether or not the students are learning the information. But standards, they stand alone, and we need to make sure that we include them and give them as much import as we do the other factors in this scenario here in this image. When we look at our instructional tool bag, we use different things to help us teach. We might have students take notes, the students use journals, they complete worksheets, there's graphic organizers and foldables, models, reports, projects, games, portfolios. All of those things are used to help us teach a subject matter. I'd like you to consider that the TEKS are also a pedagogical tool that can also help you teach. I consider the TEKS to be a chameleon because it can be used and applied in different ways in our instruction and our assessment. So a pedagogical tool is used to teach or learn something, and there are many tools that are versatile. They're versatile pedagogical tools. They save us time and they save us energy. And so when you introduce the TEKS at the start of a lesson and then you continue using that information during direct instruction, and students use it throughout their development and practice, and finally to review their performance on tests and benchmarks, you're making the TEKS an important part of the puzzle, and students are going to be able to reach success. And I want you to look at this reference here. It comes from Pearson, the makers of the STAR test, and they consider the standards a fundamental step in the learning cycle, and there are other researchers who do as well. If you want to learn more, here's a great resource from Pearson. It's 7 Strategies of Assessment for Learning. It's a book that I own, and the first section covers the standards and why they are so important. So again, I encourage you, use the TEKS to help you, to inform how you're going to teach in any scenario, whether you're direct teaching, whether you're working in a flipped classroom, or you're working through a project-based program, or you have students who are finishing fast, or whether you have to whether you're doing practicing or reteaching, or whether you're assessing a student, whether a student is self-assessing. There's so many ways that the TEKS are an important piece of the puzzle again. So I do want to show you this information here. The TEKS, they are the fundamentals, the scaffolding, the skeleton, the bones, the chassis. And what we need to work with, because these are the basics, they're building blocks, we need to work to get the students to put some meat on those bones, to get them, move them from just the standard algorithm, for example, to keep it simple, 2 times 4, we need to help the students understand why that 2 times 4 applies, or how we can apply it in a real world context. And so we're putting, again, some meat on the bones and deepening their understanding of each concept. That's why I put up here, build on the TEKS to reach rigor or depth of knowledge. So that connects again to those changes in the TEKS. The first objectives, again, at each grade level now, though they're the math process standards. And those committees that put the TEKS together, they intentionally place these standards at the beginning. It's, I think, to keep them, in the forefront for us. They used to be at the end, and perhaps there was a decision made, or that we weren't using them as much as we needed to. And so you can apply these, or they actually are relevant in all of the subsequent TEKS. So they're the first set of objectives that we need to cover, but they apply to each and every objective, after that. Whether you're working on the second or the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, you need to make sure that you keep these mathematics process standards in mind. Now, how do you apply context? You have students work with different real life examples. So here's an example of some visuals for those first process standards for each grade level, because everybody has to use them. And so whether we're looking at traffic patterns, or whether students are looking at advertising, whether they're looking at a menu, whether they're looking at some kind of graph, pie chart, I've got 2 here, for example, patterns in nature, measurement. There's so many different contexts that students can apply that information to. Here's a 4th grade example. So we're looking specifically at 4.1, 2, 3, and 4, and how those students would be able to relay that information in what context. Here's a receipt at a Target, as a matter of fact. Here's someone who's paying for repair services for their vehicles. So the context scenarios are here so that the students can apply the math. I have this quote here, context breathes life into math. I'm a firm believer in that as well. So do you speak TEKS? Here are a few things that experts on the TEKS review panel had to say. Because when we've looked at the TEKS sometimes, I'm sure you're with me here, you look at the TEKS statement and you have to read it, reread it, maybe read it again, because you're unsure exactly of what the intent is of the statement. So here what some of the experts said on those TEKS panels. Are the TEKS supposed to direct teachers or serve as a blueprint for what we expect students to be able to do? Someone else said, clarify more easily so parents, community members, students may more easily understand. Another expert said, I cannot figure out what this standard is trying to say. And another thing that was said is, of what earthly use is this standard? So these are experts from Harvard, Princeton, and other prestigious universities. So I want you to keep that in mind. Don't feel so bad when you're looking at a TEKS statement and you have to reread, then reread again. Those TEKS, they are sometimes, it seems, written in a foreign language. So the question that I want to pose to you is, do you speak TEKS? If you know that you're struggling with understanding what the TEKS statement is saying, why do we continue to post the TEKS as is? I know I've been in that situation where the administrator says, make sure that you put the TEKS up for your students. And, as a dutiful teacher, I go ahead and I put up the TEKS as is. That's how I used to do it when I first started teaching. And now we're at the point where the question is, they don't, why post them the way that they're written? If the students, even if the experts don't understand it, how can we expect these children to be able to read that TEKS statement and know what it's saying? So, and then of course, why do we take it to the next level and tell them to copy it? Does the use of an I can statement at the front of the TEKS really help? Some people use I can, some people use I will. It makes no difference. Just because you put the I can or I will statement in front doesn't mean that the student is going to understand everything that comes after it. In terms of practice, we're in the next section of the presentation now, how to harness the potential of the TEKS. So starting with that, the name itself, Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, I tell the students that means things every kid studies. We still use the same acronym, we still use TEKS, but instead the students understand it as things every kid studies. And in order to put the TEKS into a system that's going to help you and your students, this is the plan of action for you to be able to take. I actually have something flipped there. Let me see. You're going to take some time to rewrite the TEKS in kid-friendly language. You'll use a class period at the start of the year to introduce the TEKS. You're going to use 5 senses to do that. Provide a year-at-a-glance calendar. Open up for student Q&A. Use the TEKS-friendly TEKS before, during, at the end of every lesson. Provide your students with a TEKS tracking document. Model the use of the kid-friendly TEKS. Have students reflect on their progress, and ask students to communicate their progress to you and their parents. This is a year-long plan. It's a system for you to use the TEKS to make them a priority and give them as much import as everything else that you do in your class. So the benefits of doing this: when you sit down and you start to translate the documents or the TEKS statements to put them into kid-friendly language, you're going to familiarize yourself with the content. The TEKS form a system to help your students own their learning. You end up saving time because your students are doing more of the work. You have a common language from which to assess progress. Your students can explain their progress to their parents. You almost immediately know who's excelling and who is struggling with the content. The students themselves can tell you whether or not they've mastered a TEKS objective. And I'm talking about this from the kinder level as well. I've worked with students at the kinder level who are able to tell you what they are good at and what they're struggling with. And they use the term TEKS because, again, they understand it as things every kid studies. Now, what is this investment? What investment are you going to have to make TEKS a system in your class? Well, you're going to have to invest 8 to 16 hours here at the start of the year before you go into the classroom so that you can translate those TEKS statements. They are going to take you some time to be able to, reword and put in kid-friendly language. You may need some help as you work: a dictionary, online tool, a reference, another individual who may be able to help you. You may want to work with a team. If you're an administrator listening to this and you haven't put together your professional development for the start of the year, this is something that you can have the teachers work on, of course, if they agree to the strategy. And they can rewrite the TEKS so that they have something to work with from the start of the year. You're also going to need time as you introduce the TEKS to your students, and then you're going to make the TEKS part of your class routine. So that takes an investment of time every single day, but it is well worth it. It's going to make all of the difference. It's going to motivate your students. It's going to have them have a target, a learning target in mind that they understand. Not something that's just some gibberish or jargon or foreign language wording up on the bulletin board. Because that TEKS statement is just not written in terminology that they understand. So at the start of the year, keep this in mind. Introduce the TEKS in a way that you're going to be able to introduce 5 senses. Introduce it with 5 senses. So provide a snack. This is what I do. This is how I recommend. And when we do full day trainings for the TEKS are for kids, this is what we suggest. We actually provide the treat to the teachers, and they make the little baggies to get ready for the first day of school. But Tricks is the inspiration. Tricks used to have the commercials with the rabbit, silly rabbit, tricks are for kids. Well, that's where that's the inspiration behind TEKS. TEKS are for kids. And so at the start of the year, get yourself some little baggies, a little cup, fill the little baggies with the Tricks cereal, and you have the students engaged as you're covering what TEKS are at the start of the school year. And you're helping the students learn that TEKS are going to be part of their daily routine. And just in case you're wondering, the packs of cereal, or the little baggies of cereal, are not in conflict with the Foods of Minimal Nutritional Value guidelines, and I went ahead and put those references up here for you because it's okay to be able to give them, just a small amount. And that's why in the visual over here I show the little cups, because that's about the right amount of cereal that you'll want to put in the little baggie. But of course you could always have students share a bag. Now this is for the start of the year. This is when you're introducing for the first time what TEKS are, to kind of keep their attention, and you're using all of the senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste, smell, because these are treats. And it's got the added advantage that when kids are coming back from the summer break, they are starving, by mid-morning. So you're able to give them some kind of nutrient so that they can keep moving forward until lunchtime. And then this container here, that's TEKS Power in a jar is what I call it. And that's something that you keep out during the course of the year, and you keep refilling, and every once in a while you throw a TEK in the mix just to keep everybody on alert. It's just a fun way to handle the course of a class. So the other thing that you're going to want to do is put together a tracking document. And it's a very simple tool. The key is to make your students use it every day as soon as you finish up a TEK. These should not leave the classroom. They should be kept there in the room with you. They can be taped inside a spiral or inside an interactive notebook. They can also be kept in a 3-prong folder. Take it to another level and create a classroom tracker where you're able to see every student at a glance. So you can create this very easily in a Word document. Just put up a table or in an Excel file. So here's an example of what we use when we do our TEKS Are for Kids training. So TEKS Are for Kids. You may be thinking now at this point, how exactly do I get that all done? I really want to do it. I do think that I can see the value of making TEKS part of our routine every day. You're ready to start the year and you're worried about all, how are you going to get it all done? There's just not enough time for you to do it, to rewrite the TEKS, and then you're unsure about whether or not you're going to rewrite them in a way that's going to make sense. I want to tell you that we do have a tool that we've already done the work. I want to close up this session by telling you about that tool so that you know it is available, and if it's something that you want to make an investment in, by all means do so. But this is an example of what I mean. The original statement here, what's in the TEKS, this is the first objective. It's B. Use a problem-solving model that incorporates analyzing given information, formulating a plan or strategy, determining a solution, justifying the solution, and evaluating the problem-solving process and the reasonableness of the solution. So that's the original TEKS statement. The TEKS Are for Kids version is learn how to think of a plan, find the answer, explain the answer, review the plan I used, and ask myself if the answer makes sense. That's one example of how we have changed the original TEK to make sense for students. We put it in in kid-friendly language so that a student sees this up on the board and they know what it's saying. Here are the documents. So the documents that we've created, they're legal size. You can download them. They're 11 by 17 because we also sell a kit. And if you buy the kit, the size inside the box are 11 by 17. We also include the legal size versions. You get them in color and black and white. You can use the online version to, project on the wall as you're reviewing or introducing a particular objective. You can also make the copies and post. Provide each student with a copy of their own. That is what I highly recommend, that you give each student a copy of their own. And so if this is something that you want to use in your classroom, you can find the information on our website. It's treetopsecret.com, and just click on TEKS Are for Kids and you'll be able to find that information. So here's the copy of the box, where if you decide to go ahead and order, it is a box that contains these documents. We've got the full document, the TEKS Are for Kids, the front panel and the back panel. All of the TEKS are rewritten in kid-friendly terms. We call these the TEK Puffs. They are just shorter versions of the TEKS. They're 1, 2, 3 word versions because teachers told us, we want something that's even simpler. So we've got or shorter, I should say, not simpler, but they're shorter. So instead of a long statement, they're just a couple of keywords so that the students know, okay, working on that. Or they can say, I've mastered this. I've mastered multiplication, but I'm still working on division. Or I've mastered angles, but I'm still working on another concept that in geometry, for example, symmetry. So the students are able to reference those. They're just, we call them puffs. So the TEK puffs. There's a poster, and then there's the single puffs that you can put up on your board. And inside of the box, we have different resources that help you. The trackers are there. The document so that you know exactly how to introduce your students to the TEKS Are for Kids at the start of the year. There's a word cloud of the top 25 frequently used words in the TEKS. Complete list and frequency of words used in the TEKS. There's a comparison. Here's our website. So if it's something you're interested in, go to the website, click on TEKS Are for Kids, and it'll take you to the page with the information. So the summary here, going back to first days of school, here you come. Now you have a plan for saving time and energy. You have a plan to handle the math TEKS. You know your students are going to be held accountable for their learning, and your students are going to know their expectations, what the expectations are, and they're going to be motivated as a result. I want to thank you for joining me during the video here. And if you have any questions, please visit us at treetopsecret.com. You can contact me at vlopez@treetopsecret.com. Any questions that come up, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to help you out. Thanks for watching.